Assalamualaikum, my name is Nurul Azrin Airisha binti Sazura. I'm from BA118-5B.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Rashida binti Amran and I'm from BA118-5B.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Nur Irina Arisa binti Srani and I'm from BA118-5B.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Irene binti Zulkifli. I'm from BA118-5B.
Defamation shall consist of the publication to the third party of matter, which all the circumstances would be likely to affect a person adversely in the estimation of reasonable people generally. The case that we had chose was a defamation suit involving Irene Fernandez, who used to be a director of Tenaga Nita Sendirian Berhad. She was claiming for damage and a permanent injunction for defamation. The first defendant of the case is a publisher and the owner of Utusan Malaysia's newspaper. Followed by the second defendant is an employee of Utusan Malaysia. Meanwhile, the third defendant is a Ketua Meja Rencana of Utusan Malaysia. In this case, the way defamatory statement being made was clearly written, which is in a permanent form of a false statement that tend to expose a person to hate, ridicule and contempt. One of the impugned article is Sikap Irene Lengahkan Siasatan was written by the third defendant.
The first issue of the case claimed by Irene Fernandez was the plaintiff who presented in Utusan Malaysia as the following readers. Are the police investigated into the matters raised by Irene Fernandez, which is persecution of migrant workers and the abuse by the police officer charged with handling the migrant workers. Unfortunately, Irene did not make herself available for the police interview, but she did not surrender all the relevant documents. However, the defendant failed to prove the foregoing. Next, the second issue is the matters raised national and international interests and had created a controversy, and that the plaintiff was responsible for the ensuing controversy. The defendant could not prove that Irene was avoided the police investigation. This is because Irene did not have any acceptable excuse at the various time for the interview that had been held. The comment was untrue and the defense of justification had been rejected.
The third issue is the plaintiff had lied about her health to avoid police interview. The allegation by defendants toward the plaintiff were not true. Hence, Irene was never said that she would refuse handing over the document and the material to the police of the impugned article. The fourth issue is Irene Fernandez had intentionally refused to meet the police and was adamant in her position. According to the impugned article, the sarcasm words such as berjaya dalam usaha showed her effort in exposing the ill treatment. Other than that, words such as apakah sebenarnya Hela and lengahkan was suggested as wrongdoings and unjustifiable conduct on plaintiff. The statement made by defendant was not fair and honestly made. It is not available to the defendant on the account of malice.
Next, the fifth issue is that the plaintiff had no real reason to meet the police. Hence, Irene actually had gone to Chiang Mai, Thailand for her own purposes. She had never been interviewed before the article was published. In addition, the defendant were also not given an opportunity to Irene comment before the impugned article was released. And finally, the final issue is that the plaintiff has no policy in filing allegation of corruption and harassment of migrant workers. Otherwise, she would have cooperated. Irene should be blamed for stopping police investigation by not cooperating with the police when requested.
Now let's move on to the court decision. Based on this case, there is only one court that were involved in the proceeding case, which were the High Court. The High Court consists of 2 chief judges, at least 56 judges, and judicial commissioners, of whom 11 are in Sabah and Sarawak, and 45 in Peninsular Malaysia. The court also has unlimited criminal and civil power. Besides, any civil matter undetermined by subordinate court is heard before the High Court. Based on the case, the defendant of Utusan Malaysia published the statement in newspaper that issued on 20 September 1995, but the case was heard after 12 years on 26 October 2007. The plaintiffs claimed the heading of impugned article, sikap Irene lengahkan siasatan, that made by the third defendant, Utusan Malaysia, was defamatory of the plaintiff. Decision of the Judge T.R. Seng J, the court award the plaintiff the sum of Rm200,000 as general damage for libel. Here is the court give judgment to the plaintiffs as follows. First, the defendants to pay the plaintiff the sum of Rm200,000 as general damage together with interest at 4% per annum from the date of filing, and thereafter interest at the rate 8% per annum from the date of judgment to the date of realization. Second, an injunction to restrain the first defendant by itself, its agent officer or employee from publishing or to causing to be published the same or any similar libel of and concerning the plaintiff. The third is the defendant to pay the plaintiff the cost of this action.
Identification of the plaintiff. The plaintiff for this case is Irene Fernandez, a director of Tenaganita Sedembar Heights, a public figure and well-known social activist, primarily migrant workers' rights and women's rights. She filed the case that against Utusan Malaysia that claimed the heading of impugned article, sikap Irene lengahkan siasatan, on 20 September 1995. That was defamatory to her and erased after 12 years of the case.
The defendant that was involved in this defamation case consists of 3 persons, which is the first defendant was the publisher and owner of the newspaper Utusan Malaysia. Second defendant was an employee of the Utusan Malaysia, and lastly the third defendant was the acting Ketua Meja Rencana of Utusan Malaysia.
Next, the ways of defamatory statement being used. Based on the case, there is one ways of defamatory statement that being used by the 3 of defendants from Utusan Malaysia against the plaintiff Irene Fernandez, which was made by written. The statement that the defendants published were untrue statement by writing it down or printing on the surface by producing words that give necessary information or meaning. Hence, those statements cannot be deleted as it permanent. The impugned article stated that defamatory statement was sikap Irene lengahkan siasatan has been written made by second defendants. Other than that, one of the defendants was written on impugned words that contain sarcasm such as berjaya dalam usaha, pendedahan kemungkaran, and perjuang hak asasi manusia dan sebagainya, in inverted commas that show double meaning toward Irene Fernandez.
There are 3 types of defamation, which are libel, slander, and innuendo. The type of defamation that had been used in this case was libel. Libel defined as defamatory statement or representation in a permanent form. It can be made in printing and broadcasting of word by radio and television. The writer's statement was published without Irene's permission, thus the statement had been published with the intention of evil motive. It also will damage the plaintiff's reputation and image.
As conclusion, the case involved the owner, publisher, Ketua Meja Rencana of Utusan Malaysia and Irene Fernandez. Utusan Malaysia published impugned article that contains some sarcasm word that might affect Irene's reputation. Apart of that, Irene Fernandez has filed the issue to the High Court against the defendant because that statement was indeed untrue. After the judgment, Irene was found not guilty because the defendant could not give any sufficient evidence. In result, Irene Fernandez has won the case and received the damage fees amounted Rm 200,000 from Utusan Malaysia defendants. Therefore, we should be wise in choosing and expressing our words. Incorrect of using words such as sarcasm can result in legal action. Moreover, we should not take it easy by defaming other people when there is no strong evidence. The society must know and learn the importance of law. That's all from us. Thank you.